and I'm about to start painting live. I have like a couple cameras on me right now, so if I'm looking in different directions, just don't mind me right now. Um, so today we're doing a session called Get Me Bodied, and I'm just going to be kind of talking about my paint process while I do this, um, as well as my process of learning how to love myself, love my body. We're on live on a couple different streams right now, but I have two folks here with me who will be helping me out with this. So if you have questions, I'm gonna try my best to see them, but bear with me because we're literally like on three different streams. So today I'm going to be doing kind of a transformation thing. A lot of folks that have been following my art see that I paint on vinyl covers a lot, and we're going to be starting with that today. I really like working with vinyl covers because it's not a blank state, or a blank slate to start from. And usually we aren't either when we're looking for transformation in ourselves. And so I'm going to be kind of transforming this piece in front of you, where we have this kind of old Caucasian classical music vinyl from I don't know, this is from the 1960s. And so we're going to turn it into a really black, beautiful piece. Today I am dedicating this art to Rochelle Fat Leopard, who is one of my favorite photographers. Her work has been inspiring me for years, and today happens to be her birthday. So I stole her selfie. Hope she doesn't mind. Rochelle, hope you don't mind, but I stole your photo. That was actually taken by another photographer, Ryan McKinley, who I've also shot with a few years ago. This was part of his yearbook portrait series. And so I'm going to be doing my own rendition of it because I just love her body. It reminds me a lot of my own. We both have a little belly, both kind of chubby and fluffy. And I'm going to honor this Black femme today by painting her. So we're going to transform this into my version of this. There's going to be parts where I'm not talking at all, but, I'm going to be also rambling. So we're going to start off by kind of just prepping this piece. I'm going to end up going over it with a pink. Right now I'm working with some acrylic, which I really like working with acrylic because it dries really fast. I'm all about layering, and acrylic allows me to do that in a timely manner. So right now I'm just going to kind of layer this up, this little pink that I have. This is also speaking to kind of repurposing things around your house. This vinyl cover I actually got from the Scrap Exchange here in Durham, which is kind of like an art thrift store, but I encourage you, you don't always have to have fancy things to paint on. You don't have to have regular canvas. You can take vinyl cover. You can take a cereal box that you just finished last week and cut it up, use a square, and paint on that. So not having canvas shouldn't stop you. The paint I'm using is just some honestly kind of cheap acrylic that you can get from Walmart. You can get from Michael's, literally for less than $1 a bottle. So I believe in making art very accessible. You don't have to spend $9 on a tube of paint if you don't want to. Usually when I'm painting, I honestly have no idea what the piece is going to look like. And I also don't want to focus on the piece being perfect either. So a lot of times when you see folks painting, in my experience anyway, folks are they will usually plan out the piece, draw it on there and everything, and make sure everything is right. And I don't. That's not how I live my life. Just because I find that when I try to plan things, it don't always work. So, I mean, take March for example. My whole March was planned, and that didn't work. I'm sure that was the case for a lot of us. So I just kind of go with the flow, so to speak. Um, so it's just, yeah, it's too stressful trying to make sure that a piece is perfect. For me, it's more of a release, you know, than trying to make sure everything is exactly on point. So we're getting a nice little layer of this pink going. Try to cover up this guy right here. Not important. I paint on him. All right, so sorry, y'all. I'm just trying to see. Don't mind me, I'm clumsy. Oops. My little tripod is not wanting to be my friend right now. And I don't know if y'all can hear my background music, but right now I'm listening to a new mix from Sasha Marie on SoundCloud. I really love her mixes. They tend to be really long and really chill, and so when I'm painting, they kind of help with the vibe a little. I don't know if anyone else over the last 2 weeks, we've been at home, have been digging deeper into themselves and into their art. But for me, I have found that having all this time has been a perfect, excuse for me to dig a little deeper into my art. So I've been definitely trying to paint more and create more. I don't know. It really helps with anxiety. It's been distracting from all the woes in the world. So I have a nice bit of this cover. I'm not going to worry about, my lab does not want to cooperate. This is like the second time. I don't know.
No.
Delete. I don't know why I did that because I'm still on here, but technology.
We'll make it work.
Yeah. Sorry, y'all, getting back on Instagram Live so folks on there can see too. So if you haven't already, please check out. I'm gonna be posting her IG page, who I'm getting ready to paint. But one reason I chose her today is because it really took me seeing work from photographers like Rochelle. You'll see when you have a chance to explore her Instagram or her page as well. She captures a lot of bigger bodies. I used to be really shy about putting my body out there. I've always had like a bigger belly and a very non-conventional kind of beauty going on for myself. And so it took me being on like places like Instagram and Tumblr really for me to find photographers like her, other photographers like Shug, shout out to Shug down in Florida, other Black femmes putting their bodies on the line, folks like one of my favorites, Gervais out in California, I have like a lot of like Insta inspiration out there. So this is one. So I'm gonna let this kind of dry for a second because once I start putting on my second layer, I don't want to mess up this pink too much, and so which I'm just kind of good, but we're just gonna leave that. You're gonna see me getting paint all over my hands because I'm messy and clumsy, which is why I wore kind of an old shirt so that if I get paint on myself, it's fine. Part of the fun part about art is getting messy. So yeah, we're gonna let this kind of dry. If y'all have any questions about what I'm doing or my process, feel free to ask, and I will try my best to see and answer your questions. Shout out to all my folks. What is this? We're on studio with this one.
This is YouTube Live.
YouTube. Okay, we're on YouTube Live. We're on my Instagram, and we're on
the LGBT Resource Center.
The LGBTQ Center of Central's Instagram. So that's a lot going on right now. But for those just tuning in, I'm taking this vinyl cover piece, which is a 1960 something classical music album, and we're turning it into one of my Insta inspirations. I usually like to work from black and white photos just because I don't feel obligated to certain colors, and I can allow my imagination to just kind of roam free when it comes to that. And like I said before, I don't do a good job of planning, and so there's going to be a lot of work on here that doesn't really seem to make sense at first, but once you kind of come along this journey with me, you'll kind of see where I'm going with it. So right now, I'm still giving this another second. There's still a little gloss on here, which is indicating to me that it's still a little wet. So it needs like another minute. Usually with acrylic, depending on how thick you lay it on, it's usually dry within 5 to 10 minutes, which I love. My stuff is all about the layers. So I'm going to encourage a little bit more drying here. And again, I usually get these from the scrap exchange for like maybe 50 cents each, if not 25, somewhere in between, something like that. And so if you're ever interested in doing one of your own vinyl cover remakes, you can get one from there. But again, it doesn't have to be something like this. It could be anything you have around the house that has like a flat surface, but depending on the texture will have a different effect on the paint. Like if you're painting on wood versus painting on metal versus painting on plastic, but they're all possible. I prefer something cardboard or paper-like, just because of the absorption rate for the paint. So we're kind of at a point here where it's starting to dry, and I'm almost ready to start adding these extra layers. Also, never be afraid to get up close and personal with your pieces. I like to hold mine sometimes while I'm painting them and put them back and hold them again. So now, yes.
How did you get started painting, or what made you start painting?
I started painting. It's been about 10 years now, and it was really just. It really started off as a seed for my niece because I've always technically been somewhat of an artist. I've always been really creative, but my work growing up was more focused on drawing versus any type of color or paint or anything like that. And about 10 years ago, my niece was maybe 2 at the time. She was a little baby. We wanted to just do something fun for her and just create some art. And I painted something just from the soul. Wasn't anything fancy or anything. And put it on Facebook. Was like, oh, boom, this is just something I made. and someone really liked it and wanted to buy it. It was like someone I was connected to on Facebook but didn't know. And that was like the first time I, sold work. And even the first few years I was painting, I didn't really consider myself to be an artist. I was just like, oh, this is just something I'm doing on the side. But it really became, my escape, really. Like I really dug deep into my art when I moved to Durham about 8 years ago, like kind of escaping a bad little situation. And I needed a release, and my art ended up being that for me. And people enjoyed what I was creating, and it just kind of grew from there. And 10 years later, here I am. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with kind of creating some shadow in her body, which usually you add shadow last, which my process can always be a little weird, but I'm weird, so we just want to go with it. So again, I usually just go for it. I don't measure anything. I'm usually eyeballing it. So when you're at home and you're wanting to paint whatever it is that you're painting, it's really about just paying attention to the shapes and the light. Never about it being perfect or right or anything like that. And so I'm gonna go in. I kind of mixed in a little black and some blue because I don't want my shadow to be too dark right now. But this is just gonna give me a basis of where some of the darker parts of her body are. And I'm gonna start on the bottom. It doesn't really matter where you start, but I'm gonna start at the bottom. And she has a little dye action down there. And trust me, the very beginning will always look very chaotic in my pieces, and sometimes with yours too. And when it's looking all kind of crazy, we can immediately get extremely discouraged. But there are no mistakes in art. There's always a way to layer on top, to fix something. So I don't worry about it being perfect in the beginning, or actually at all. But yeah, we're just gonna start off kind of shaping things off. I'm starting with like the outside of her body, paying attention to certain shapes that I see. Again, I'm gonna end up kind of reshaping this, but this is just kind of like a little, we're just starting. And feel free, if you're just joining in, to ask questions. We will periodically be checking to see if, anyone's asking anything.
Hello, beautiful people of the world.
Okay. So now that I kind of have a general kind of shape of the body, I'm going to go in and start adding a little bit more layers. I'm starting off with a darker blue for some of the darker parts, and now I'm kind of easing into a lighter blue.
So one of the things I noticed is that you use colors that are not found in the picture that you are using. Mm-hmm. How do you choose your colors?
It's really hard to answer that because I just feel like the colors come to me. Like even with just starting this, I had no idea I was going to start with blue, but it just kind of came to me. So I personally have a lot of fun with color, period. And I feel like a lot of the times with the folks that I paint, it's whatever energy, their like aura starts to kind of really pop out in the pieces. And so I don't know. I guess the colors really just come from the subjects. You know, I'm kind of drawing in from their energy as well. So, and it also, yeah. I mean, I'm sure my own energy has a part to do with that as well. But I feel like I really draw in from like the folks who I'm painting. So again, I'm kind of also going in and adding some more shapes that I see. That I know like her hand is gonna be here. Yeah, some more belly work here, breast, little elbow action. Yeah, the color thing is weird because especially like if I'm doing like a custom piece, like I always tell folks like don't tell me what colors to use. Like don't be like, hey, I want you to paint me, but can you make a red background and me have purple hair? Like no, that's not how it works. I really trust spirit, and that's just what it is. And you know, if you don't trust that with me, then I can refer you to another artist. But and I'm still finding those like darker, the darker parts of her body and adding those darker colors for now. And again, I'm gonna shape everything up later. But you know, it's for me, it's all about the coloring and it's the colors and the shapes. When you're trying to get something down and where the light hits, it's like kind of paying attention. So right now I'm doing a lot of what I like to call shadow work. I'm really paying attention to her shadows, and then I'm gonna go in a couple layers, and then we're gonna work on the light. I'm also paying attention to, or at least trying to pay attention to like the negative space that I have in my photos. So like you'll see that I have a lot of negative space here in the background. So I want to make sure I'm honoring that with creating the shape for this piece. Jennifer here at the center was really nice enough to print this off for me because usually I'm doing this from a much smaller scale. I'm usually using my phone to look at an image. But this is great because this gives me a lot of room and space. Usually for me, when I'm looking at bodies, I'm looking at a lot of circles and triangles in the face and all around. And so I'm trying to honor that. These shapes that I see. I want to make sure because she has like a little tip and her belly right here. So again, this looks really messy right now, but sometimes the beginning of our plans, they be looking messy. We be messy sometimes, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. So I'm gonna let this blue dry for a moment. I'm gonna get ready to switch colors. For me, it's all about the layers. So we're on almost our layer 2. I'm not gonna be counting all the layers, but kind of show you a process. This is what we're painting. We're gonna get a good view. Hello to everyone still out there watching. I'm gonna be doing this until 4 o'clock, so no rush on this piece. So because I started off with kind of a darker color, this blue, I'm gonna end up choosing a lighter color to go in with my next layer. We're gonna start maybe with this orange. It's kind of calling out to me.
That's a really cool shade.
Huh?
I really like that shade.
Oh yeah. And the orange goes really good with the blue too, honestly. And I'm just kind of fanning this to dry the layers because I don't want my colors to get too muddy. I want them to layer, but I don't want them to necessarily mix within each other. So I'm giving this a chance to dry. I don't see any questions yet, but I see folks in here. So hello. I think when I first started painting a couple years ago too, it was really important for me to capture a certain kind of subject, which was Black femmes, and especially Black femmes with bodies that I didn't see represented in art. So that typically tends to be bigger bodies, that typically tends to be queer bodies, that typically tends to be trans bodies, that typically tends to be differently able bodies. And so a lot of the focus on my work thus far has, been those, folks that represent those things. Especially my fat femmes. All right, so I think this is just about ready for my next layer.
I want people to feel comfortable enough to show themselves.
Which I have like a kind of like a light orange going on right now. And what I'm going to do with this orange is pretty much kind of going to highlight some lighter shades of her skin. Not the lightest part, but we're just kind of going down from where I was capturing the shadows. I also tend to paint in shapes sometimes, so you'll kind of see me doing a lot of circling.
Your existence, but the existence of the whole world, the universe. So we have to be really careful with the intentions that we put out. We need to learn that energy is a response.
And as you see, because I let that blue dry, you have that nice little kind of layer of orange on top of the blue without mudding it. I'm kind of shaping up her shoulder area and her arm, elbow. And I just, hope you realize, world, that when a Black femme shows you their body, it is a gift. Look at this gift. We're all blessed. And again, for folks that didn't hear who I was painting, I am painting one of my Insta inspirations. Happens to be her birthday today. Rochelle Fat Leopard. Happy 25th birthday. Got a little belly action down here.
So when we were getting ready for today, you sent me music, and that's what we have playing in the background.
Yes.
What role does having background music play in this process for you?
It's definitely really important. It really helps with the energy that you are putting into the piece as well. Mm-hmm. I tend to kind of get into a rhythm with the music when I'm painting. But yeah, it definitely helps with the energy. Like, I would never be at home not listening. I don't like to watch TV or watch movies when I paint because it's too distracting. Like, I like to listen to different music, and it really depends on the time of day. Like if it's a Sunday afternoon, I might be listening to jazz, or I might be listening to some rock and roll. I might be listening to some mixes. Like I said, I when it comes to painting, I love for some reason listening to Sasha Marie. Also, I have a friend in Portland who's also a Black queer DJ, Father Fanny, who also has a lot of really dope mixes on SoundCloud, which I enjoy because they're like 2 hours long. So when I'm painting, I don't have to worry about stopping what I'm doing to adjust the music or, do anything like that. I can just vibe out. So shout out to Fanny for making those really dope mixes. I can create my art too. And usually when I've done painting classes before, I've done fun things with like bringing actual records, so folks can like kind of participate in helping to choose the music, which has been fun in the past. But for the most part, I like to just kind of put on a playlist and not have to worry about it. So as you see, I haven't necessarily drawn anything. I'm literally just kind of been eyeballing, shaped, and shifting her paint, my paint, to create her shape. We're just kind of molding things right now. Her hand action is going to be happening. One of the most challenging things for most artists that I know, but especially me, is drawing hands or feet. I don't know why. It is one of those hard things. But I have her hand action happening in this area. Cheeks. Okay, now while this is drying, I'm going to go in and kind of reshape this background by kind of doing another layer on top of it, so that we're losing some of those words and everything in the background. This paint can be a little thin, and so sometimes it takes a few layers, which is fine. So while this middle part is drying, I'm gonna just move on to another section. This is gonna help me shape things up.
So you paint on vinyl covers. What are some other, I guess you could say, maybe unconventional materials that you use?
Clothing. I've tried painting on clothing. Like, I think my most successful was actually painting on a camouflage jacket last year, which was really great because that material almost felt like canvas. Yeah, so it was really thick and easy to work with. But other things that people can use if you're at home and you might have a little paint and you don't have any actual canvas, is you can take like a cereal box, cardboard, or any type of cardboard that you're using, like moving boxes or whatever, and literally just cut them and paint on top of them. And as long as you put like a nice sealant on top, then it'll last for a while. I started using vinyl covers in the beginning because I started collecting vinyl kind of heavy a few years ago. And when I got my first collection, which I found right outside of Central, it's crazy. I was literally just driving down the street, and one day saw this whole big stack of vinyl next to a trash can. So I immediately stopped the car and was like, let me see what's going on over here. because I'm one of those people. I'm not afraid to pick up trash off the side of the road. And the first couple records that I picked up were like Michael Jackson and Diana Ross and like all this like old school black, R&B and funk and all of this. And I was just like, I'm not even going to dig through the rest. I'm just going to take this whole pile and just dig through it when I get home. And I found that half of them were still really intact, but there was a good portion of them that were damaged. But the album covers were dope. So I was like, oh man, like I got to find something to do with these album covers. And then some of the album covers are ugly, to be honest. And so I was like, instead of throwing this away, maybe I can turn this into something else. And that kind of began my vinyl cover love. And it's cute because, I mean, they're small where, it's easy to find frames for them. And like I said, you go somewhere like a scrap exchange or something and get a whole stack of them for pretty cheap. I've had a lot of people just give them to me when they had records that were damaged and still had these covers. And a lot of the times I meant to bring an actual record. If I have a vinyl and the record is damaged, it's scratched, it's warped, or whatever the case is, I will actually use that as a palette. But right now I'm using cardboard as a palette because you can literally use anything to do some of this stuff. And this is working just fine. So, but usually I actually paint on a record. So I'm just kind of going back over this pink and layering it up. There was like a part of her arm I extended out too far, and I'm kind of like covering that up and kind of like shaping up some other parts that I kind of went a little too far up, but that's fine. Like I said, there's no real mistakes in art. So we have a really nice shape coming up here. Let's smooth out these little shoulders. And I'm going to end up doing this probably at least 2 or 3 more times in the background because I want this pink to be really prominent. I also like to kind of go back and forth between the main subject that I'm working on in the background to give each section time to breathe, time to dry. I don't want to overwork wet paint.
As soon as I come through, I let that chop off.
And I found that like looking at images like this really helped me accept my own images that I would see in the mirror. It gave me a lot more confidence to see other fat people with their bodies online, which is another reason I started kind of doing the same thing. I started getting into kind of body, like nude modeling, so to speak. And when I initially started, I was still really struggling with even just looking at myself and looking at my body. The first time that I shot nude was with Sugar, who is one of the fat photographers I mentioned earlier. And it was amazing because I don't think I'd ever really ever looked at my body before looking at the photos and thought, wow, I have a really beautiful body. But I would see these other fat bodies and be like, wow, they're so beautiful. But if their body is beautiful and mine looks like their body, then my body must also be beautiful. So, it's a whole process behind that. Okay, so we're gonna let this background kind of breathe. So again, we're working with this repurposed vinyl cover. And Jennifer, would you mind updating me on the time?
We are at 2:44.
Okay. Wow. This time is already kind of going by really fast. Yeah. Time really does kind of, go fast when you're painting too. It's another reason it helps folks with, dealing with anxiety and depression, because you really can fall into a rabbit hole of creating once you get into it. So I'm going to go back into the body area of this painting now. Let me check really quickly to see if we have any questions. I don't see any yet, but I still see folks watching, so hello. So right now I'm going to go and be a little extreme, because we're going to go in with some white now. And this white is really going to represent where I see the lightest parts of her body. So I'm going to be looking for the parts of her face and her body that the light is hitting the most, where there's the least amount of shadow. I don't want this white to be too prominent, so I'm going to end up layering on top of it, but it's going to really help those areas pop out. So this is not about being perfect, because it's really about just kind of paying attention to shapes, paying attention to shadow, and paying attention to light. Also, I'm embracing these mistakes, or things that feel like mistakes. They're not necessarily mistakes, but we might feel like that.
I need a warmth your tone. Got my first 20, just smoke it up alone. This is isolation. This is demon. Could I reach for her kiss? Could I reach for her kiss? If I'm smoking,
see, I pretty much have a lot of the highlighted parts of her body. And in just a moment, I'm going to go in and start highlighting some parts of her face.
You ain't used to a boy, please to the moon. It ain't your fault, it ain't your heart sinking slowly. Sky things I can move through you, but to drown into this great fear. This is isolation. This is my best. Could I reach for kids?
Really appreciate whoever's watching on this Tuesday afternoon. For those who are continuing watching, I'm going to be repeating a lot of the things I say, so that when folks are just hopping in, they can kind of see for themselves, or get explained what's happening with this. All right, so now that I have some of those parts highlighted, I'm going to repeat the darkness part. So I'm going to go back in and find some more of those darker areas so that I can highlight with black now. Before I went in with like a dark blue, because it was like a dark blue mixed with black to kind of ease the black up a little bit. But now I'm actually kind of going in with a more legitimate black for some more prominent, darker areas of her body, like her hair.
He says there's no me without him. Please help me forget about him. He takes all my energy, trapped in my memory, constantly holding me, constantly holding me. I need to tell you all the pain he's caused.
Any other questions, Jennifer?
I need to tell you
So you talk a lot about, just kind of paying attention to like spirit and picking up what the muse is telling you in a spiritual kind of sense. So, I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what that's like?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, and to be honest, sometimes it is a little hard to explain, but I feel like when I interact with humans, that I definitely see different colors and in them. I guess what most folks would refer to as their aura. And so, yeah, it's kind of like trusting what I see in folks has always been a thing. Um, and yeah, and just kind of like trusting those feelings that I get when it comes to those that aura that I'm seeing, and that's just really what's reflected a lot in these colors. And then, like I said, it's kind of paying attention to how how the light hits really for folks. Um, like for example, like right now I'm on her elbow, so it's a little darker, so I'm not going to be afraid of kind of real dark on that elbow area. It's darker on the side of her hip here, so I'm going to go in.
I like to hear how you describe things. Like so for people watching, the first time that I saw you paint was last year when you came and you did an event with us. And really hearing how you describe seeing light and seeing dark was really prolific, honestly. It just it changed how I saw things in art. And so to watch your process here and watch you layer, it's just really interesting.
Well, it's really honestly just a reflection of us. We're literally made of all of these sometimes messy, uncertain, questionable layers of ourselves. We have these things happen. Mistakes, trauma, drama, all of these things. I think that kind of messes up. We think it messes up this image that we have of ourselves or other people have of us, and it's just like, no, these mistakes, these unexpected things, these unconventional things can actually really enhance our beauty, these really complicated layers of ourselves. And so, yeah, I just kind of like to reflect the fact that we're not perfect. We literally can make a masterpiece out of mistakes.
I appreciate that. So we do have a question here. This is from Kyra. Hey, Kyra. Kyra is a student here that frequents the center.
Mm-hmm.
And she also has, she's a business owner as well. She makes skin products and all sorts of cool things like that. Her name on here is Coco Scrubs. And so she's asking what your name is. So I guess she just kind of dropped in. And so she's asked, hey, girl, hey. So she's asking more about who you are and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, for folks that don't know, my name is Gemynii. People call me Gem for short. I am a sound and visual artist. And right now you're seeing me in my visual element. And right now we're working on a body positive piece that is on a repurposed vinyl cover, which is part of like my little craft, so to speak. I really, really love working with repurposed material. And so, yeah, I'm an artist that loves focusing on highlighting the beauty of Black femmes and Black trans folks, Black folks, period. And so that's what we're doing today.
So, okay, Cara says that she would high dub the function. Kyra says that she would love to paint with you one day. So Kyra, here's the cool thing. We were going to bring Gemini in for one of our Queer Queen sessions, but things have changed, and so this is how we have transitioned to that. So one of the things that we wanted to do today is really talk about how you could make art from things around the house. And so we have this vinyl cover here, and we're using fairly accessible materials like the acrylic paints that are being used. Jim and I talked about how
we're literally using bottles of paint that cost less than $1 each. So
right. So these are things that you could try. So if she's talking about like how to see the light and how to see shadow and how to replicate that on whatever materials you're using, this is stuff that you could absolutely do. I think as we spend more and more time around the house, there will be work in finding beauty and art in the mundane. And so we're talking in my mind, as somebody who lives alone, these are survival skills.
It's not even just about living alone. This is survival skills for anyone. I mean, for me, especially, I think even pre-Corona days, because we in the Corona days right now, even pre-Corona days, I think that just living as like a Black feminine country, period. Like I have PTSD, I have trauma, I have anxiety, I have depression, I have all of these things. And, for anyone that's in that mind state of like constantly worrying about things and being stressed and all of that, I have found that digging into my art has really, really helped to relieve, especially in these days, because, I'm scared, y'all. I'll be scared. And so I think that, diving into my art, it just really reminds me of my own humanity. And yeah, it gives me a chance to like redirect that energy into something beautiful. Because we in scary times, y'all. We in scary times, but we can still create something beautiful. We can still see, like you said, that the beauty and things that we normally wouldn't.
What else could I use besides paintbrushes? I don't have any.
Your fingers. You can use your fingers.
Okay, taking it back.
Finger paint. If you have old makeup brushes, you can use old makeup brushes. You can use old toothbrushes. You can even take like a butter knife and do different things. I mean, you can, especially for my Black folks, we've been creative for generations. I mean, we've survived off being creative and finding a way out of no way. And so, sometimes you just got to do that. I was even just telling Jennifer that, right now it might even be hard for folks to acquire paint supplies and things right now because of how the state of the world is. But if you happen to have paint already in your home, and if you don't have paint, crayons work. And I'm sure there's other ways to create colors. YouTube University has some everything. Okay. I'm sure there's a way to make a painting out of ketchup and wine and, flowers in your backyard. There's always something. But for me, because I am an artist, I typically try to keep some kind of paint, on deck, so to speak. So yeah, I'm kind of, I guess, blessed in that regard, but not everyone has access. So, if you do, there's some things you can do with it. So right now, I'm just kind of randomly picking colors that I just feel like I don't know if there is a correct explanation for some of the things that I'm doing. But right now, I'm using these colors to continue to shape her body and shape her face. And each layer that I'm doing is just kind of helping to form the initial image that the ending image I'm trying to get to. And I ease it up with a little pink.
The layers really turn out nice with the different colors. It has depth in a very interesting way.
Yeah. I think when I first started painting like this, I went to one of my old art teachers from like middle school and showed him my work. And the first thing he said was, "You need to go study color theory." I did not. I just kind of listened to myself. I mean, I guess maybe it could have helped me, but I felt like I had to really just kind of trust my own creation process. And so, other folks kind of appreciated that, thankfully. So, just don't be afraid to be yourself. One thing about my work is like I never want to teach anyone like straight up technical skills on how to paint, but just more so kind of like trusting yourself and trusting what you create, because I think what stops a lot of people from wanting to paint is they feel like it has to look a certain way. Like it has to look perfect. It has to look professional. It has to, look like whatever level of art they have set in their mind. But at the end of the day, art is not about that. It's truly, truly, truly about expressing yourself. I mean, like, how boring would it be if everyone painted the same way? If everyone dressed the same way, if everyone thought the same way, And it's the same thing with this. So don't be afraid to, step out of your comfort zone. Really. So I'm gonna let this, it's getting a little wet. So I'm gonna go back to my background and make her pop out a little bit more. And if you want to practice painting bodies, I would suggest, it's always great to start off with your own, like take a little selfie of you in the mirror or whatever you got to do, and work on recreating that image in a way that feels good for you. If you're not comfortable with taking pictures of yourself, if we're not always comfortable looking at ourselves, that's fine. And you can find other bodies that look like yours and practice drawing them, painting them, recreating those images.
Someone said yes to Black people making a way. Somebody else said your painting is beautiful.
Thank you.
If you all have questions for Gemynii, please go ahead and put them in the chat. Let us know. This is a conversation, a way to engage. So what's on your mind?
Yeah, I think also for me, it's really important to capture bigger Black bodies, especially in this moment, because the question of healthcare and accessibility is out there. And there's a lot of folks with bodies like this who are feeling really disposable in this moment. I mean, I think that there's a level of always kind of feeling like that in society, because we've always been taught that we aren't good enough, that we don't have value because we lack a certain shape or certain aesthetic or whatever. But I'm here to tell you that your bodies are not disposable. Your bodies matter, and it doesn't matter like what shape or condition that it's in. Just gotta love what you got, appreciate what you have, and try to do your best to take care of it in ways that feel good for you. I'm going back over. There's still, but even though I think this is like almost my third layer of this background, I can still see a little bit of the layering of the lettering behind here. But honestly, I don't really mind it too much as long as it's not as prominent as it was. For those who were around in the beginning of this video or this live, I should say, it started off as a completely like red vinyl with lettering all over it, and Old White Man because it's a classical album cover, and we had to flip the script and switch up the color, switch up the image, and so this is where we are with it. Usually I might have a cup of wine or something like that when I'm painting. I don't have that right now. So if you're home and you have some wine or whatever else to relax you, you can do that while you paint too. That usually helps. Hopefully once the corona days chill out, then we can go back to doing these in person. Did that one ended?
Yeah.
Instagram be tripping sometimes.
Do it again. Yeah, I'll do it. Okay, right?
Right now I'm kind of going in, making sure I'm filling in little details of her shape, making sure that's right. I'm also going back and making sure that I have some important lines in here to define her arm. Okay, so I'm ready to start going on to more layers. It's all about layering, y'all, for me. It really is. And when you're at home, like really what you are wanting to do is start off with whatever color, it doesn't matter whatever color it is, letting it dry, and then putting thin layers of paint on top of it of a different color will really help you to achieve a really nice effect when you're painting. So I'm going to use this light green to go back and highlight some more lighter parts of her body. And I might have missed earlier that got covered back up with other layers. Right now, I've been kind of going back and forth. I go really color crazy, and so I've pretty much have maybe about 10 different colors on my palette right now, which include like a white, a purple, which I haven't used yet, black, like an electric, darker blue, a light pink, a light yellow, a dark yellow, turquoise, and orange, and hot pink, which I haven't used the hot pink or purple yet, but I've pretty much been going back and forth between the other colors. I'm gonna kind of let y'all get an up close of where I am with things right now. And also, this is the original image for those who haven't seen my muse. My muse, her name is Rochelle Fat Leopard. She's a photographer based in New York City. Today's her birthday. So doing my version of her portrait that was taken by Ryan McGinley, based out of New York. Since I haven't used my purple yet and my pink, I think I'm actually mix my purple and my pink together. My purple is kind of dark and lighten it up a little pink. Don't be afraid to mix colors. You don't have to go with whatever straight up color comes out of the bottle. Just don't try to mix too many colors all at once because it might come out a little muddy. So. Again, if anyone can hear my music and wants to know what I'm listening to Sasha Marie, one of her mixes on SoundCloud. I think it's her latest one. She has a lot, so it's a lot to explore with. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if anyone ever wants me to paint them, if they don't feel confident painting themselves and you want me to make a picture of you like this, just DM me. I can do that too. But I'm literally just going in there on top of everything that I've already been doing.
It's gonna pop the edge. So it's on DNI's on here?
Yeah.
Okay. So something is going on with the LGBT Resource Centers page. So we are now on streaming from diversity and inclusion.
Okay.
So for our new visitors, our new viewers, can you tell us who you are, what you're doing, and where people can find you?
Yes. So if you are just tuning in with us, since 2:00, I have been working on recreating a portrait of Rochelle Fat Leopard, a Brooklyn-based photographer who's really well known for doing a lot of body positivity photography. She's been one of my inspirations, so I decided to paint her today on a repurposed vinyl cover. So we have a vintage vinyl cover. This was a classical album, and so now we're turning it into this. And I am kind of maybe about 70% done with this, 65-70%. It's not going to be a very heavily, we're not really like focusing a lot on the details. This is more about shape, this is more about color, this is more about light. And so this is inspiration here, kind of everyone can see what I'm working with here. Reason I chose this image is because I wanted to represent a black fat femme in this session, and I love her body. Her body looks a lot like mine. We have a lot of belly, really chubby, fluffy, soft, and black. So yeah, this is what we've been doing. We're gonna be here for the next 45 minutes as I put final touches on this. And basically what I've been doing is going back and forth between the image in the background with different layers of paint, focusing on shadow work, focusing on the light, focusing on aura. And also, this person's birthday is today, so happy birthday, Rochelle.
I never thought you'd leave me. You've killed my every dream. Torture and sad. These things you left hang around.
And sometimes you have to use your imagination with things. For example, like there's a part of her chest that's so highlighted because you wanting to be safe on Instagram. Then I'm not actually seeing certain parts of her body, but I'm just gonna have to use my imagination as you see, which is fine. So just because you are working with a certain image doesn't mean that the image has to look exactly like that. You're just literally using it as a reference. So I think she needs a little bit more green.
That is lovely.
Huh?
That is lovely.
Oh. Yeah. And there's certain colors that, like, no matter what, I'm always just gonna use anyway. Like if I don't have yellow, for example, I probably won't paint because it's just certain colors I probably have to have for my own self. But then there's other colors that I see within folks. I'll honor her belly by highlighting it. Shout out to the fupas.
Hey.
Because fupas deserve love too. Fupas matter. I think also it's really important for me to paint fat people because, like I said, I just don't see them enough in art. And then when I do, especially like if they're painted by like a cis man, it's always super sexually charged, and based, and I don't want to do that. That's not what my body work is about. It's really, truly, truly about embracing the Black femme form, especially when it's fat. To be honest, I used to be really kind of nervous about people watching me paint because I didn't have the confidence, because my paintings can be really messy in the production of them. But I've learned to embrace that, I'm different, and the way that I create art is also going to be different. And so that's also going to be reflected in y'all as well when you do your thing with paint. It's not going to look like mine. It's not going to look like anyone else's. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
So can you tell us more about what that process is like coming to the realization, okay, I'm not Gemini, so my stuff is not going to look like Gemini.
Yeah. I wouldn't want it to. You want to have your own thing when it comes to art, If you go into a museum or a gallery, and let's say you told every artist in there, hey, paint an apple, and we're all gonna have like these apple paintings. If every apple looked the same, then how boring would that be? You know, you want your own spin on things. And so, yeah, don't be afraid to like, just be yourself in the piece. You know, if you want your whole thing to be red with a bunch of circles on it, fine. That's you. You know, you just really. It's not about selling it. It's not about impressing other people. It's not about trying to be in an art show. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's literally just survival, getting out your feelings, getting out your emotions, like having that something to look forward to doing, having that release. And so I think once you focus on that, then the pieces will in themselves, you know, really shine. So don't be afraid of yourself and the possibilities of what you can create.
We're back on the LGBT Resource Center's live now. I figured out whatever is wrong.
Okay. So I'm getting to the point where I'm just finishing up some layers, and then I'm gonna go back into the background, and then once I finish that, I'm gonna go back in with a much smaller brush and start adding a little detail. But for right now, just kind of having fun playing around with the color and final kind of shaping of things in her body. Also, I mean, although I appreciate everyone watching me, you know, you can always find a lot of videos online on like other painting techniques if you do want to try with other types of paint. I typically work with acrylic, which is what I've been using throughout this paint session. For me, I like working with acrylic because it dries really quickly. It's very, for me, it's very forgiving. But other folks might want to try, you know, oil or tempera or whatever. Yeah, you don't have to limit yourself to just acrylic because I'm using it. But this is just what works well for me. And usually you can get like a pack. The paint that I'm using, like from what is this, Craft Smart? You used to get like a whole pack of this for like $10 of different colors and everything. So for those wanting to know where to get those. And to preserve the piece after I'm done, I have an epoxy spray, which I didn't bring with me because we want to do it outside. But if you're going to use cheap paint like what I'm using today, it really helps to get that because it will preserve your piece. You know, keep the colors in there and make sure that if it needs to be wiped down because it gets dusty or, you know, whatever, that you're not going to be wiping off any chips of paint.
What kind of epoxy do you use? Or
there's you know, I don't know the exact name of it, but basically it's in the Arab can section where like you do get the spray paint and it's just like a clear. You can get like a matte or you can get a gloss. I sometimes like to get a gloss, but it just depends because I find that if it's too glossy, it's harder for me to take a picture of the painting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But for, you know, when I first started painting, for me, it was just really about trial and error, just trying things out. I mean, you know, there's a saying, ain't nothing to it but to do it. It's true sometimes. in this case, definitely, you know, because it's just really about just exploring and messing around with different colors and techniques. And usually I am looking at a muse. A lot of people ask me where I get my inspiration from. I'm usually always looking at a photo. I, it can definitely be hard for some folks to find a muse. So I usually tell folks just look in your photos and find one of your favorite pictures. And it could be a picture of a shoe. It could be a picture of a coffee mug. It could be a tree. It could be a selfie, like whatever it is, and practice with that. Usually, sometimes when I'm on Instagram, I will see things pop up, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this is great!" And then, it's usually easy for me to find some inspiration. This morning, I was back and forth between what and who I wanted to paint, and then this image popped up, and I was like, "Oh my God, I got to do this!" So, hopefully, we'll share it. What time is it?
We are at 3:25.
So another question that I get sometimes is people ask me, how long does it take for me to work on a piece? And I would say the least amount of time will be what I've been doing today, which is 2 hours. I started at 2:00. It is now 3:26. So, we're a good hour and a half in. There's definitely times because I feel like sometimes I can dig a little too deep and I can just paint and paint and paint. So sometimes I do like to give myself a limit and be like, okay, you have 3 hours to paint or 2 hours or whatever the case is. And whatever I have in that final moment is what it is. But it doesn't always have to be like that because, there's also pieces that I will really take my time on. There's pieces that have taken me months because I'll work on it for a few minutes and then I will get off, go back on, so don't be pressured to create a whole masterpiece in a certain amount of time. Sometimes it does take a while. But for the sake of showing y'all, this is what I'm doing today with it.
So we have a question.
Yes.
This person said, before we got disconnected, I'd ask, what inspires you?
My main inspiration is Black femmes, Black femininity. For me, that has been what I've seen show me the most love in my life, but also get the least amount of love in the world. And so I have made it a mission to include them in my work, especially because, growing up, I feel like art for me was very, art and beauty, period, was very whitewashed. And I wanted to create work that showed the beauty of Black femme bodies. And so that's been my main inspiration. Queer folks, capturing us because we queer people, period, aren't represented very well, haven't been represented in art very well. So yeah, just kind of finding folks who haven't been a part of like conventional beauty standards have been one of my biggest inspirations in art and creating. I'm rooting for everyone Black, and that's why I paint them.
So our audience out there, if you have questions, just let us know. You can type them in, and I'll ask for you. So we do have a few new people in. Can you tell us who you are and where we can find more about you? And let's say I want you to do a portrait for me, or I want to commission something. Where can I get in contact with you at?
So my name is Gemynii, Gemynii. And I'm a visual and sound artist. And today I am working on a body positive piece of one of my Insta inspirations, Rochelle Fat Leopard, based out of New York. And you can find me on Instagram at Gemynii. You can also find my muse on Instagram at Rochelle Fat Leopard. Um, this was a portrait of her by a photographer based out of New York as well, named Ryan McGinley, who's amazing. He's another photographer who allowed me to feel really free and beautiful in my own fat body. Um, he took this picture of her as part of his yearbook series, which I was also a part of. And I just really love this piece. So that's what we're working on right now. This is the Muse black and white photo that we're working with right now. I have my repurposed vinyl cover, which has been the canvas today. You can find your own really cheap at if you live here in Durham, really good source to get this. It's a scrap exchange. So you usually have them for like 50 cents a piece. I'm using some pretty easy to find, pretty accessible paint. This is Craft Smart. It's really cheap, less than $1 a bottle. And so, and I'm using just regular cardboard as my palette here because I usually paint on recycled records, but I forgot to bring mine to the center. So we're using what we got, which you can do as well. And we're kind of putting the final touches on this piece.
We have another question.
Yes.
Are there Black painters that have inspired you?
Definitely. One of my biggest inspirations is Basquiat. I love how unconventional and raw his artwork is or was. So I carry Basquiat with me because he's an inspiration. Not Black, but also one of my biggest inspirations is Frida Kahlo.
Yeah.
And even like local artists, I'm constantly inspired by my community, and so like local artists like Candy Carver, like I really love the colors that she uses. They're always really, really just bright and stick out for me, and so I'm always inspired by my community as well when it comes to other artists. I'm inspired by a lot. I'm inspired by folks that don't even know. I have no idea they inspire what I do.
So you talked about, finding inspiration in other artists, in music, even with the music that we have playing today. And I'll give you an opportunity if you'd like to, mention who this artist is here.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I was going to ask, are there other unconventional places that you find inspiration?
My biggest has really been from social media. Honestly, it's like seeing what I see on my phone, only because that gives me access to what I don't see typically, I guess. So when I see other like fat femmes, I'm usually always inspired by them, especially when I see them have the confidence to wear whatever they want to wear, step outside in a little two-piece. I'm inspired by it. So shout out to all my fat femmes out there just living your best lives. They inspire me, even if they're just walking down the street. I don't know them.
And the music that's playing today.
So the playlist that I have been working with today was created by Sasha Marie, who has a lot of her work on SoundCloud that anyone can go check out. I also have a couple mixes on SoundCloud as well. If anyone wants to listen to them. And if anyone is interested in getting a custom piece, you can find me on Instagram and just shoot me a DM. It's usually the best way to get in contact with me. And again, you can find me on Instagram at GEMYNRI for those who are not looking directly into my Instagram right now. So we have about 25 more minutes. I am getting to a point where I'm going to be adding some final touches for this piece. I'm going to go over the background one more time, but only because it's hard to see on camera, but I can still see some of the lettering. So
We do have another question.
okay.
Do you feel it's necessary to differentiate yourself from other artists? More specifically, Black artists, more specifically, Black artists, whether it be artists in music, drawing, videography.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, I definitely want to have my own voice in what I'm doing. So, I don't aim to be like anyone else. And I wouldn't want anyone else aiming to be like me either. I believe that we should inspire each other. But, find a way to make something yours and own that. So. Any other questions?
So people kind of, coming in and dropping in and
Popping in
a
and
little
out.
bit.
Yeah.
Drop a question if they should feel moved.
And I think since this quarantine has started, I think last week, I probably did like 2 paintings. This is my first for this week, and I'll probably do at least probably 2 or 3 more for the end of the week. Mm-hmm. It's been helping to pass the time and helping with my anxiety.
Mm-hmm. I think in this day and age, at this particular point in time, like because of what's going on, it's going to be really important to have some type of coping mechanism down. Besides, stuff that might be typical or easy. When I say that, I'm thinking about like things that I do that may not necessarily be the most healthy way to deal with stress and anxiety. So I think this is a valid form of not only, self-love, self-expression, but then also self-care.
Mm-hmm.
More than just, this is something to pass the time. This is something to also kind of, really learn more about yourself as well in doing so.
Definitely. And that's why I encourage folks to, if you've never painted yourself or painted anyone that at least has a body that looks like yours, even if it's not yours, to do that. Take that time to dig a little deeper, show your body some appreciation. I've definitely done I've done quite a few self-portraits. I was on the verge of doing my self-portrait today, but I really wanted to honor this Black film. And so, maybe next time, because I will be back to do another version of this on, is it April 28th? I think that we're doing it, which is also a Tuesday. So I might do one of myself then, who knows?
Yeah. We have another question. As an artist, how do you cope with negativity or backlash as it relates to your work?
Literally don't stress it. I think it's important to always be open to critique. But any type of, really just kind of negative comments, I just don't pay attention to. I mean, people are going to hate, people are going to be mad. And especially when it comes to dealing with bigger bodies, people are going to say things like, oh, you're promoting obesity or, whatever the case is. And it's like, no, like however your body is, whether it's healthy or whatever, is no one else's business but yours.
Mhm.
And so, I just have to like let that stuff roll off and not feed into it pretty much. So that's how I did it. Kind of just focus on me and not on what people are mad about. And if they don't like it, that's fine, because there's a lot of art out here, so you don't have to subscribe to mine. That's cool. But somebody's gonna see it, and someone's gonna appreciate it, and that's what I'm more focused on is like I've had folks in the past say, hey, I never thought my body was beautiful until I saw something that looked like it in your work, and I was touched. And that's what I'm paying attention to, not if someone doesn't like it. It's fine. So now that I have this extra layer, I have some of these letters. You can kind of see here. I might go over another little bit, but again, it's not about it being perfect. I'm really pleased with how this has been coming out. So sometimes I'm not always happy. Sometimes I might paint something and I don't like it, and that's fine. And then I'll end up just painting something else on top of it the next day. So if you paint something and you're not happy with it the first time, don't stress yourself over it. Just try again the next day with something else, or just keep working on it until it does look satisfactory to you. Sometimes for me, the pieces never really feel done, but I just like have to just let it be so that I don't overwork the piece either.
You're listening to Sasha Brady on Soul Election all day. Happy New Year.
So like, for example, I could work on this all day, but whatever I have, in the next 15 minutes is just gonna be what it is. To be honest. And don't be afraid to pick up the piece. Sometimes, when I have to get to little details of my piece, I have to pick it up. If it's a big painting, obviously I wouldn't recommend it. But if you can scale it in your hands in a way that makes sense, then, do that.
What are some of the varied sizes you've worked with? So maybe like the smallest or largest canvas?
This is usually the smallest I work with. This is my smallest that's comfortable for me. But typically like a 16 by 20, 20 by 24, which are typical pre-made canvas sizes that you can find in like Michael's or something like that. Even Walmart sells canvas now. And sometimes occasionally I'll go bigger, but the bigger it is, the more expensive it is to ship, to buy, to transport. So I also keep those things in mind. If I have something smaller, then it's just easier to get around, especially if I'm trying to put it in an art show or something like that. But I really appreciate all the questions and opportunity to paint live in front of y'all today. I'm going and try that. This is like one of the hardest parts, but also one of my favorite parts is adding the eyes, doing that face detail. It's all about the layers too. And right now I'm just literally wrapping this piece up.
I'll be honest. One of the things that I don't paint people because I can't do faces. So I think this is really This is great.
Faces can most certainly be one of the most intimidating things for folks to paint. And I think that one of the biggest mistakes is that people overthink them, overthink the faces. And again, they just don't pay attention to where things sit. For example, you know, they don't pay attention to how far the eyes are apart or like where the edge of the mouth falls and compares to the eyes and like those sort of details. But really, at the end of the day, if you can paint one thing, you can paint another thing. It's really just about paying attention to the shapes and the lighting, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, for example, right now, I'm not 100% happy with her face, but it's all about just kind of taking your time and just keep going for it in layers. And that's it. You can do it.
Thank you for that.
I feel like you painted something really nice when I was here last year too. Did you not, or no?
I still have it. Yeah, I still have it.
I was gonna say, I feel like you did paint something, and it was like a body, a face, or something.
It was a body. I did not do the face.
See, her face is kind of hard because it's small, and sometimes when you're doing smaller stuff, getting into that detail can be kind of annoying. But it's okay though. Sometimes I gotta get up on it so I can see what I'm doing. We got about 10 more minutes. Okay.
For my viewers, if you have, for any people that are joining, if you have questions or anything like that, be sure to type them in and we'll answer them.
Also, if you're enjoying this and you want to tip me, tips are encouraged. Cash App Gemynii, Gemynii, Venmo Gemynii with 3 eyes instead of 2. And see, like, even now, I don't like her face because it's not looking right. And that's fine. So I'm going to show you, boom, and we're just going to do no detailed face with this one because I don't want to overly detail this face. So see how easy that was for me to just forget about it. You don't always have to do a really detailed face. Right now, it's not going to be detailed, and that's okay. Because I don't have time to mess around with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, the shape is there.
The shape is there. You know what's going on. And just to show y'all, if you're not comfortable with doing faces, don't do a face. Usually I could do faces, but I don't have time for that today. We're just gonna fix it back up. Some highlights. It can be anyone's face. Literally anyone's face. But we have Rochelle as our muse. So, I'm starting with the final details. Make her little hands stick out so you know that they're hands. And she had her little white sock on. I didn't even notice her white sock earlier. And her little white sock down here at the bottom. It's about the details. Pick it up the details. That matters.
This has been really interesting watching your process. One of the first things I remember you talking about was layering, and it, really watching how the layering process kind of came along. That's been cool.
Thank you.
I wondered, okay, how you gonna cover up that man's face in the background? And it worked.
So you see that, you don't have to have a blank slate to create change, and to transmute something. And we have in this piece.
Yeah. We talked about how metaphorically how this can be like, what it is to change yourself, like when you are, transitioning into something new or something different. This is everybody collectively, the world, we're going through a big process together. None of us started with a blank slate. You work with what's there.
So yeah, I think that I am just about done with this. What I want to do with it, because I don't want to overwork it. Kind of happy with how this has turned out.
So you paint, and you also mentioned that you are a visual artist, or excuse me, an audio artist. What are other mediums besides like painting? I guess maybe like portraits. Are there other ways that you create?
I love cooking. I like repurposing clothes when I have time. But typically, I would say my creativity is between finding and collecting and curating music, creating images, creating good food. For me, art, food and art is the same thing as well. That's my way. I write occasionally, not as many, much these days. But there's just so much for folks to do. Creative wise, especially during these days. I mean, making jewelry from things you find around the house, painting on things you find around the house, mixing up your clothes and deconstructing them, and, painting on your clothes. So all type of things we can do to try to find healing during this time. And for me, it happens to be art, but for other folks, that can look differently, but it's just one way.
We have a question.
Yes.
Do you ever use mixed media?
Yes, I definitely have used like newspaper, magazine, collage, before in the past. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing. Like if you don't have paint, at the house and you want to make something, but you have a bunch of old magazines, you might have some scissors, you might have some glue, you can definitely create doing it that way as well. So we have how many more minutes? About 5?
Yeah, 5. It's 3:54.
And don't be afraid to paint naked too. When I'm home, sometimes I'm working on more body positive pieces. I like to wear less clothing, so you can do that while you're home too, as a way to connect with your body and put your body's energy into the piece as well. Also, the great thing about acrylic is it might get on your hands, but it washes away really quickly. So that's great. So I'm also gonna just make sure I put my name on there so that, you know, I don't forget who made this. And the brushes I have were also fairly cheap. Like you can go to Michael's and get like a whole pack of these particular brushes for like less than I don't know, probably like $7. And I just made sure I had something that was thin, something slightly wide, something much wider for the background and stuff. So you don't have to have like a whole big collection of brushes. But make sure you get something that has real hair, like camel hair or something like that, and not plastic, because plastic brushes suck. It's not going to do right for you. Yeah.
That's really nice.
And one trick that I started doing thanks to my friend Candy Carver is actually putting. I don't always do this for all of my pieces, but I try to remember to do it. Is to put my name actually inside of the image. That way, no one can try to crop my name out, or like sometimes they might even not realize that my name is in there. And so, if anyone tries to steal my work, then they can't do it because
That's
my name
smart.
is in there.
Oh, you sort of said I love it.
Yeah. So yeah, this is pretty much. And like I said, we started off with a completely red canvas, and completely transformed it. So, yep, there we go. That is it. The piece is now completed. Actually, I might add a little bit more paint to cover up this stereo, but for the most part, we are done. Again, this is the image. And you kind of see the fun of working with vinyl, kind of turn it into something completely new.
Mm-hmm.
Like you thought this was a mistake. You thought I was a mistake, but I am a masterpiece.
Right.
You thought I was trash, but I am treasure. I'll take a minute to dry. A little extra layer should help. And that is it. ladies, gentlemen, and hymns.
I'll start using that one.
I don't want to leave my non-binary folks out of the game, you know. Also, shout out to all my Black trans folks in the community. It is Trans Awareness Day. Make sure that you're taking this day to remember and uplift and support Black trans femmes, especially in these Corona days. So a lot of these Black trans folks are losing work, and we want to make sure that our community is safe. So make sure that you are supporting Black trans folks in your community. It doesn't have to be Durham, it could be anywhere. So if you don't know any in your area, find them. They're there. Support them, pay them.
So I said thank you.
Oh. Any more questions before we wrap it up in this final minute?
Well, from the NCCU community, from the LGBT Resource Center here in the Carolina State University, and even from me personally, thank you. This is lovely.
I appreciate y'all having me once again. And if you didn't catch this whole video, cool. I'm going to be back April 28th, right back here to paint something else for y'all. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Alrighty. Bye, y'all. Take care.
Bye. Thank you again for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So